Whoa. Tangled mess. Holy shit. The fuck, bro? It's like you don't even touch wires, man. And they just fuck themselves up. I just stayed up all night, which is normal for me. I shouldn't act like it's too it's too unique. But I stayed up all night finishing The Darkness That Comes Before, book 1 of the Prince of Nothing trilogy. Oh my god, I fucking loved this book. Brilliant, masterful, even. Well, okay. There's maybe about 100 pages of this book that was mind blowing. The story is told in different parts, exploring a different archetype, a different character, all leading to this holy war. And part 4 is called The Warrior. And that part is one of the best things I've ever read in my fucking life. Okay? It is part 4, right? Let's make sure, dude. Yeah, part 4, The Warrior. One of the best things I ever read in my fucking life. Now, I just did a quick look around BookTube here. There's plenty of videos about this title. And I think they're probably mostly good. Okay. If you can go hear someone break down the psychology, the philosophy of this book from a bunch of different videos, break down the plot in detail from more attractive faces that don't stutter quite as often as I do. But if you want to stick around, then let's get a little psychotic with it. Let's get a little fun with it. Okay. The Darkness That Comes Before opens with a Nietzsche quote. And that was enough to make me roll my eyes pretty immediately. Look, my history as a human being is, I don't know, I think I spent 10 years as a practicing nihilist. I don't even know how to say it. As a fucking chaotic ball of nihilistic mania. So opening up with a quote from Beyond Good and Evil, of all things as well, was like, what are we doing? Okay, is this the uber edgy dark fantasy book? Because I've been recommended this book at least 5,000 times because of my interest in grimdark and stuff like that. Black Company being my favorite fantasy series of all time. And everyone would recommend this book, either online or even in real life as well. But they would recommend it in like ways that made me want to gag a bit. Because they're like, hey, look, you want to see something fucked up, man? Fucking read this book. It's like people would recommend this book the same way that little kids in a Stephen King novella would ask you if you wanted to see a dead body, man. You want to see a dead body, dude? You want to see a dead body? Read this book. Like, okay, I don't really love dark fantasy because it's edgy or graphic or just full of constant rape. That's not really why I'm into fantasy or dark fantasy at all. But that's like the way it was presented to me, of like, bro, it goes there, bro. It goes so far, bro. Fuck, man. It's so hopeless and bleak and brutal. Like I'm about to listen to a fucking death metal record from the early 90s. And so it took me a while to finally warm up to it. And yeah, the first thing I'm presented with is a Nietzsche quote, but it is a very good one, right? It's along the lines of a thought comes when it wants to, not when I want it to. So right away we are interacting, or at least laying down that the foundation, the thematic foundation, the philosophical foundation of this book is going to be about agency, is going to be about the illusion of free will, how freedom and will both are illusory. And this holy war, I think, is fascinating because it seems to be fought by fanatical nihilists. And that's when I really started warming up to this book, when we started meeting all these different characters. Well, I fell in love with it pretty quickly because Kellis in the prologue was a fascinating person. Someone who makes nihilism divine, who manipulates the darkness that comes before the thought into a religious rite, a way of life, um, a practice. A practice. I really loved that so much. But when I started realizing that this was I've never seen nihilism presented in quite this way, or at least cosmic pessimism. I want to call it nihilism for shorthand. Honestly, I think that this book is severely nihilistic, but I do think that it interacts with nihilism in beautiful ways. It interacts with how nihilism makes fanatics of its most devout believers, of its most ardent supporters. Nihilism produces more fanatics than any other school of philosophy. Christianity, religions involved. You know, it's even more dangerous because nihilism is obsessed with the purity and the darkness that comes before. That darkness being nothing and everything, to be the prince of nothing, to be the prince of nihilism itself. I find this series very interesting, but to get to the most interesting part of the book, of course, we're around, you know, a commie and a sorcerer, Esmenet, a whore who is like one of my favorite characters in the whole book. Her point of view chapters, I thought, were heartbreaking, and also did something else to this nihilism. It started poking a few desperate and absolutely pathetic holes of light in this pitch black darkness of the philosophy of the darkness that comes before. It started just like hopelessly poking these these pinpricks, right? These pinpricks of light that just pathetically instead of illuminating hope, just seem to outline or better spotlight the absolute vacuousness of its characters. I thought Esmenet was really interesting because there was something fucking adorable about her. Because she'd be in a room where Inrao and Akamian were talking about like big things, the Holy War, consults, and infernal conspiracies, and she'd be aware of the fact that me, this stupid aging prostitute with this dead fucking kid, like me, like someone who should be forgotten by history, not even a footnote, a fucking skid mark on history. I am in the front row of something massive, of something that poetry is written about, of something that epics are written about. I am in an epic. I'm in a great story. I am a part of it. I am rising above my station. And like through the men that she sleeps with, she expands her worldview, expands her stories. She's a woman who loves stories, and the best way to get the intimacy of a story, obviously, is through fucking them. Uh, like, dude, there's this scene where the consult fucks her and it's black seed all over her belly, like interrogates her that way, giving her so much pleasure. It's such an invasive scene. It's such a cruel scene. And it's such an unfairly erotic one as well. I thought through Esmenet we did amazing things. She was a particularly desperate character who, through that's where we do that thing that's interesting with nihilism. This isn't a hopeless book. I don't think it's a pitch black book overall. It's not dominated by hopelessness. What makes it feel so hopeless are the pinpricks, are the small stars of hope inside of characters like Esmenet that R. Scott Baker almost ritualistically tortures out of her. But yet she continues to have this strange hope. Now that hope, I don't care if it comes out of selfishness. This book can be extremely dark and grim, and I think it's to get you into the headspace of there's no true value judgments here. This is true nihilism. No true value judgments here. Things happen. You have no agency. You have no autonomy. You are a slave to all that dominates you. and what dominates you is the darkness that comes before. The best part of this book is the part of the warrior that focuses on a journey that Kinar, this Skilvendi psychopath, this great warlord, and Kellis, this Dunyain, very mysterious sorceress figure that they go on. The entire journey is comprised of verbal jousting, of a duel. It's a very long duel. It's like 100 pages long, and they're dueling verbally, sometimes physically. They are dueling with each other. Now the Skilvendi, I think, are really interesting because they're like they're a great example of like the fanatical nihilists that I was talking about. They are people who believe their god had lived and now had died, and now they live in a post god, no god territory. Correct. So like when they're murdering people, they're like, well, you're dead now. You're nothing now. You go on my arm now. But it's a very profound moment as well when they're scarring themselves like that. That's the fanaticism involved with nihilism that can become um, extremely vicious, vicious in its doctrine, right? Nihilism can absolutely have a doctrine, and the Skilvendi in particular are a terrifying example of the most extremist form of nihilism itself. Now, Kellis, he's this like manipulative, super interesting guy who who is all about manipulating the darkness that comes before the thought. Let me just read this part really quick. This is I think, the clinch pin, the most important part of this book is encapsulated in this paragraph from Kellis. The Dunyain, Kellis said after a time, have surrendered themselves to the Logos, to what you would call reason and intellect. We seek absolute awareness, the self-moving thought. The thoughts of all men arise from the darkness. If you are the movement of your soul, and the cause of that movement precedes you, then how could you ever call your thoughts your own? How could you be anything other than a slave to the darkness that comes before? Only the Logos allows one to mitigate that slavery. Only knowing the sources of thought and action allows us to own our thoughts and our actions, to throw off the yoke of circumstance. And only the Dunyan possess this knowledge, plainsman. The world slumbers, enslaved by its ignorance. Only the Dunyan are awake. Mengus, my father, threatens this. Like, the reason he's on this journey in the first place, because he has these dreams of his father beckoning him there, and then Akamian is like freaking out because he's also having these dreams. But it's like when the next Anasarimber shows up, it's to signal the end of the world, the second apocalypse. Now, in that paragraph, R. Scott Baker truly does something, I think, remarkably impressive. Because I think through that statement, Kellis believes that he is offering liberation through this undeniable nihilism of the self. Like, you can navigate the darkness that comes before. You can seek to understand the darkness that becomes before, because the darkness that comes before, in the most pitch black of nihilistic circumstances, perhaps that is the soul. Perhaps it is that ineffable thing that's providing the propulsion, the jet fuel that makes the thought happen. Or it could be something else. But either way, you can navigate it, you can circumvent it, you can manipulate it, you can anticipate it, you can control it, you can liberate it. Right, because I used to be deeply nihilistic, and there's a large part of me that still believes that free will is an illusion, or we have like free will in our environment, but it's so restricted by our own anatomy, restricted by politics, by government, by circumstance, by romance, by some sort of thing that drives you to slavery or to wealth. Like, we're all dominated by something. But maybe there is freedom in our environment, but it's up to us, or like a more anarchist thought, to liberate those pockets of freedom, to liberate those opportunities around you, so that you have more freedom, right? So that you have more freedom of mobility, you have more agency, more autonomy. But I think that like the freedom is largely hoarded away from us. Now, I think you can look at that mentally as well, psychologically. I think that the more work that you do on your mind, either therapeutically, meditatively, whatever, you can liberate those parts of your mind that is prohibiting you from enjoying a full and complete and more free experience, probably as well. That's how Kellis presents it, and that's how R. Scott Baker presents Kellis's argument. But the way I read that is not as liberation through nihilism, but as nihilism's ultimate weaponization. That's how I view that, because it's a tool of manipulation, because it's a tool of not just understanding the human experience, but hijacking it, right? And like you might think that like you're hijacked by these thoughts that come out of nowhere. You're hijacked by impulse. You're hijacked by empire and by blood. Like you're hijacked by all sorts of other things anyway. But perhaps the human experience itself is being hijacked, and wrestling with whatever's hijacking you for some slice, for some taste of freedom. The meaning of life isn't weaponizing the aircraft of your soul. Liberating the aircraft of your soul from whatever is hijacking it, I think, would lead to total spiritual annihilation if we do have a soul, like entire annihilation. I think that our lives largely are, and this isn't like easy to hear, but this is what like years of nihilistic or deeply pessimistic engagement has taught me. It's not what you want to hear, but I think that the human condition is all about being hijacked by the darkness that comes before, being attacked by the darkness that comes before, being constantly invaded upon. I think that our lives are it's an incredibly invasive psychological experience. That's what the human experience is. But maybe that's the epitome. Maybe that is exactly what makes this experience human at all. Okay, like maybe human beings aren't meant to be an entirely liberated people. And I think that liberation is code for weaponization, especially in a universe like this, which, at my most pessimistic, more than mirrors our own lived in world in a lot of different peculiar and morbid ways. Weaponization, to me, when it comes to nihilism, is inseparable from liberation. And weaponized nihilism, talk about jet fuel for a holy war in a post-God universe. Like, do you not see? Do you not see the perfect abject villainy in Kellis's philosophy? Nihilism to its logical end conclusion in a fantasy world where there are no limitations. That's gorgeous. Like what R. Scott Baker is doing is gorgeous. And throughout that warrior part, that duel gets more and more heated. And you find yourself agreeing with one or agreeing with the other, but then you realize that like by agreeing with Kanar, which is what I call him, and I know that can't be his name because it sounds like an Australian with a speech impediment saying no, but Kanar, you're like, I agree with this guy, but oh wait, he's a mass murderer and rapes so many people constantly. Or like, fine, I'll agree with Kellis. Oh, did he just murder a fucking child? Oh, and is he fucking facilitating all of this like savagery that Kanar is putting out into the world because he's a useful fucking tool within his manipulative magical arsenal? Like, but you got to remember, no value judgment, no true value judgment, but both are dominated by this like by the insufferable end goal of moral catastrophe. And then we get a character like Serway, right? She's this like wonderful concubine character who really is like stands in the middle of both of these different philosophies, and they're not entirely different philosophies, right? Like one's nihilistic fanaticism, and the other is this radical new doctrine of nihilism that would involve manipulating the darkness that comes before and all that shit. But like she stands in the middle of that, and the way that both men use her is incredible because the way that each man use her speaks to their own brand of fantasy nihilism. And both are deeply, deeply abusive and unforgivable, but also her reaction to the abuse, to the use of both men is very telling. Becomes a follower, a lover, obsessed, worships Kellis, and is terrified of Kanar. And the difference there, right, is the brute physical abuse of Kanar pales in comparison to the thought manipulation of Kellis. Right. So, like, in this radical new view, this radical new liberation, weaponization of nihilism is more promising, seems more fruitful than than almost the status quo of fanatical nihilism that Kanar represents. Like, this is a book where if you cared about nihilism, like the philosophical branch of nihilism is where I've spent most of my time. I've changed recently, playing around with some Christian anarchism. but I've spent a lot of time on that philosophical branch of nihilism, on the big tree of philosophy. Now, on that branch, on that branch, there are several twigs. You know, there are several different leaves on that branch. There's an existentialist leaf, an absurdist leaf, a postmodern leaf, a Marxist leaf, even. There's a lot of leaves on the branch of nihilism. And I think that you can interact with all those different things in different ways. Like, maybe a more optimistic person would read this book and be like, "You're the maker. You decide your own fate, or decide." But even then, you'd have to be dishonestly engaging with it. This is, I think, explicitly a book about nihilism. Most people just call it a book about cosmic pessimism or bleakness. I think it's one of the most interesting philosophical statements within the school of nihilism that's been done in the last 30 years, right? 30, 40 years. It's one of the most interesting things because we are doing so many interesting thought experiments. We are kind of dueling with the fates of nihilism here. And I can't wait to see where this series goes. I love this book so fucking much. The prose is outrageous. R. Scott Baker is one of the best fantasy writers I've ever read after reading only this one book. Now, this book does feel like a setup, right? It's a lot of setup, and the next book will get us into the the Holy War. And I will definitely be covering the rest of the series as well. I have the Warrior Prophet sitting in my on my shelf in my library. My library. It's a small fucking room with some books in it. My library. Who do I think I am? but yeah, like I said, if you were looking for something that's more of a plot review, there's plenty of those out there. What I wanted to do here was, oh god, I don't want to call myself advanced or anything, but have like a serious discussion about nihilism as a formidable philosophy in a genre that is, I think, otherwise overwhelmingly moralistic or moralizing. And this is just such an interesting book where that doesn't matter at all. Right? We are dealing directly with nihilism. We are dealing directly with the school of nihilism in a very interesting form of nihilism. I was obsessed with this shit, man. Like I said, I stayed up all night finishing it. And that's why I think maybe my words here have been a little confusing because I haven't slept on it. But I also wanted to get like the real raw emotion after just finishing it. And this is it, right? It sounds manic because it should sound manic. And also because, you know, I fucking have bipolar disorder. I should be a little manic sometimes, especially when I get obsessed with something. But that's it. That's all I can do. Thank you so much for watching.